Okay. How do I even start talking about this game that can only be described as wacky, scary fun? I guess I'll just, start talking. Hi, how's it going? Today I'm coming at you with a new game you might want to try. Funnily enough, this one is also horror themed, just like the last one. It's almost as if we're in some kind of spooky season right now. I didn't plan this whole horror series of games, by the way, it just kind of worked out. Let's just start summarizing this game. Inscryption, everyone! A game that is actually pretty well known because its creator is well known. Inscryption is made by the same person that made games like Pony Island. So if you remember that game from when it skyrocketed in popularity on YouTube a couple years ago and somehow didn't hear about this one, then I suggest trying Inscryption immediately because you won't be disappointed. For the rest of you though, I've got a question for you. Do you like card games? Do you like horror? Do you like some cryptic shit you'll never understand, but appreciate anyway because the game is trying to do something unique and maybe you'll get into it too? Then, once again, try out Inscryption. Okay, so let me explain why I'm saying you should play the game immediately, because this is incredibly important. You're gonna want to play this game as blind as possible. For that reason, I'm not gonna talk about 2/3 of the game. Only the first part, because that's the part people are most familiar with when getting into the game. So let's get into that part, shall we? If you look at pretty much any promotional material for Inscryption, then you'll recognize the things on screen and the vibes the game is going for. Horror card games, that's what. And my god, does it work. I'm not even gonna start on the card game part. Let's leave that for later, because I got to talk about the vibes in Inscryption. Sitting at this table with the very handsome pair of eyes right there in front of you with absolutely nothing else is a great setting. There's no background, just the void. And there are only table props that you can interact with. The game throws a curveball at you though by letting you stand the frick up. Can we talk about how amazing that is? I feel like that doesn't get enough attention, honestly. I mean, no one expects to be able to stand up here. And it only enhances the vibes of the wooden cabin you're in. The beautiful pair of eyes is still in full darkness because the light doesn't reach to his side of the table. And everything else in the room only makes it clear that you can probably not escape this place. Or at least, it's gonna be hard. Now let's leave escaping the cabin for later though. I think it's about time we get into the actual game of the, game. Inscryption is basically a very simple card game. You're not playing Yu-Gi-Oh here, no. You just need to tip the scale to your opponent's side by doing damage to him. Easy, no problem. Now how do you go about violently murdering the pair of eyes at the other side of the table though? Well, who would have guessed? You use the cards in your deck, just like any other card game. Inscryption differs though. To play a card, you must sacrifice a creature to play it. Or two. Maybe three actually. Some of these beasts are very bloodthirsty. There are only a few cards you can play without sacrificing another one. Want to play a stoat? You gotta play a squirrel for free and sacrifice it first. There are of course exceptions, bones for example, but that's a bit more complicated, so let's not get into that. Every card, okay, wait, no, stop, not everyone, but a lot of cards have a sigil. This is a special quality of sorts the card has, like flying, which skips attacking the opposing card and attacks the enemy directly. Or block flying, which, well, you know, makes the flying enemy attack the card instead of immediately going for the player. There are a lot of these, okay, it's hard to keep track, I haven't played in a while. You can also take a sigil from one card and sacrifice it to give it to another at certain points. Because yes, the first part, or act, I should say, is a roguelike, so there are different events you can come across, like the earlier mentioned sigil sacrifice. But there are also others, like a backpack to give you items to tear out your eye, for example. You know, the fun stuff. And of course, there are also bosses, which are kinda unfair, actually, but that's the point of the game. Once you know how a boss works, you'll be able to get through it. And these bosses really make a setting for each of them, like the prospector creating a forest around the table. Speaking of tables, remember how I said you can get up? Well, do you want to know why you can stand up? The goal of exploring the cabin is to escape. You do this by doing things with the items in the room and in the card game. you're gonna need to know both really well to get the hell out of here. And of course, you need to beat the roguelike that has been set out for you. I'm not gonna tell you how to escape, or even who is helping you escape. I'll let you figure that out yourself. Anyway, that is it for the first act of Inscryption. There are 2 more, like I said earlier, but those are so story relevant that I'm simply gonna ignore them. I will say though that after the first act is done, the entire game takes a wild turn. For better or for worse, I'll leave that one up to you. All I can say without outright spoiling the shit out of this game is that the base card game becomes even more complicated. The sacrificing will of course still be there, but there will just be a lot more added to it. Like energy, which you gain 1 of every time you end your turn. So the strong cards that need a lot of energy are only able to be played later in the match. There are also these weird gems that make the game so complicated that I myself never even bothered with using those cards, because my god, I could not get my head around it. The story starts getting more involved after the first act as well. There's a lot more to Inscryption that I haven't talked about here, even for in the first act. Like I haven't even touched on the trader and trapper, let alone the weird mushroom scientist. So if you think that what I've said is not enough to convince you to try the game out, then hopefully you will understand that I want you to go into this as blind as possible. In fact, I feel like I've already said too much. So don't just think that what I have said here is all there is to the game, because my god, it's not. But yeah, that's where I'm leaving you. If you're worried the card game will leave you after the first act, don't worry, the card game aspect will stay throughout the whole game. So I really recommend this one, even if you aren't interested in the story, because the card game itself is already just plain fun. Oh, and let me know if you were interested in the game's story. I know I was. Anyway, see you in the next spooky game recommendation, I guess. Goodbye.